The 22nd of June, 1941. The sun rises over a continent already drenched in war. As the dawn breaks, the sound of engines, gunfire and screams consume Europe's eastern horizon. The German army, millions strong, bursts across the Soviet frontier. Tanks crush the twisted remnants of border fences. Dive bombers carve black scars in the sky above Brest. Minsk and Lviv. Columns of refugees flee eastward, desperate to escape the thunder of the advancing Wehrmacht. Behind the armored columns march the Einsatzgruppen, Nazi mobile death squads. Their mission, to eliminate undesirables, Jews, political officers, and anyone the Reich deemed an enemy. Local nationalist militias join them, not as victims but as eager accomplices, hoping new masters will bring freedom from Joseph Stalin's brutal repression. Among these nationalists stands one dark, polarizing figure, a man who would become both a symbol of resistance and of terror. His name was Stepan Bandera, and his story is one of fanaticism, blood, and betrayal. Early sparks of radicalism, Stepan Bandera was born on January 1, 1909, in the small Ukrainian village of Staryi Uhryniv, nestled under the dying shadow of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. His father was a Greek Catholic priest, and his mother came from a long clerical lineage. When the First World War consumed Europe, young Stepan watched as soldiers trampled through orchards, dug trenches through his family's fields, and demanded food from terrified villagers. This chaos shaped him. When the war ended, peace did not follow. The Austro-Hungarian Empire was gone, and new nations clawed at its remains. The people of Western Ukraine dreamed of independence, but Poland, newly resurrected after partitions, claimed the same land. Brutal battles erupted over Lviv. The Poles won and Galicia became part of Poland. The Ukrainian flag was torn down, the language suppressed, and dissatisfaction smoldered among its youth. A teenage Bandera joined Plast, a nationalist scouting organization that disguised patriotism as camping and moral training. But beneath those tents and songs grew ideas of armed struggle. By his late teens, Bandera had taken an oath to the Ukrainian military organization, a shadow network that preached liberation by bullets, not ballots. The radical organizer, by the time he entered Lviv Polytechnic University in 1927, Bandera was already living a double life. By day, a quiet agronomy student. By night, a radical nationalist learning to forge documents, spread propaganda, and evade the ever-watchful Polish police. When he couldn't persuade with words, he turned to violence. In 1929, the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists, or OUN, was founded in Vienna. A union of fiercely patriotic and militantly anti-Polish groups. It aimed to create an independent Ukraine through revolution. Bandera's charisma and ruthless belief in his cause propelled him upward quickly. He became the OUN's propaganda chief, coordinating networks of underground cells and orchestrating acts of terror to awaken the Ukrainian people. In those years, nationalism mixed with extremism, and Bandera was its flame. His followers carried out bombings, assassinations and sabotage, targeting Polish officials and anyone labeled a traitor. When Polish Interior Minister Bronisław Pieracki was shot dead in 1934, Bandera's name surfaced as the operation's brain. He was arrested, accused of orchestrating terrorism and sentenced to death. But the noose never came. Poland commuted his sentence to life imprisonment. Bandera vanished behind prison walls, at least for a time. World War II and the Nazi connection. When Nazi Germany attacked Poland in September 1939, the world shifted overnight. The Wehrmacht attacked from the west, while the Soviet Union struck from the east. In the chaos, Poland fell in weeks. Prisons emptied. Bandera escaped or was released. Accounts differ, but what mattered is that he was free again. And he saw opportunity. He made his way to Kraków in Nazi-occupied Poland, where he met with officers of the Abwehr, Germany's military intelligence. They shared an enemy, the Soviet Union. The Nazis wanted destabilization within Soviet borders, and Bandera wanted an independent Ukraine, on his own terms. The Abwehr saw a ruthless, ambitious man, willing to sow chaos behind Red Army lines. They gave him money, arms, and freedom to operate. By 1940, his organization split into two factions. One faction favored diplomacy and cooperation with Germany, under Andriy Melnik. The other, younger, more fanatical group followed Bandera, calling themselves OUN-B. While both factions harbored anti-Semitic and ultra-nationalist ideologies, Bandera's was the more violent. He organized mobile groups of militants trained to follow German troops into Soviet territories, raising Ukrainian flags, taking control of cities, and purging undesirable populations. Bandera promised loyalty to the Third Reich, but he viewed Adolf Hitler and Stalin alike as imperial occupiers. For him, both had to be outmaneuvered. Operation Barbarossa, Dreams of Power and Blood, June 22, 1941. Operation Barbarossa begins. The largest invasion in human history. German forces storm the Soviet Union. Within weeks, Nazi troops occupy Lviv, and the OUN-B, trained and equipped by German intelligence, moves in behind them. Bandera's followers waste no time. They declare an independent Ukrainian state in Lviv, without German approval, and proclaim Bandera as its leader. Nazi commanders are furious. They never intended independence for Ukraine. Within days, Bandera is arrested in Berlin and later sent to Sachsenhausen concentration camp. But before his arrest, his forces unleash horror. In Lviv, mobs inspired by OUN propaganda round up Jews, communists, and suspected Soviet sympathizers. Thousands are beaten, humiliated, and murdered in brutal pogroms. While no documents directly link Bandera himself to these atrocities, his movement's ideology and orders created the environment that fueled them. The UPA and ethnic cleansing, even while Bandera sat imprisoned, his network continued to expand under the OUN-B banner. In 1942 and 1943, the group formed the Ukrainian Insurgent Army, the UPA. It claimed to fight both Nazi and Soviet occupiers, but often turned its fury toward Poland's civilian population. Entire villages were wiped out. Men, women, and children killed in massacres remembered in history as the Volhynia massacres. The slogan was Ukraine for Ukrainians, and it became a license for bloodshed. Between 60,000 and 120,000 civilians died, most of them Poles, many of them Jews, victims of a campaign designed to erase other ethnic presences from Western Ukraine. The violence left scars that would last for generations. From behind German wire fences, Bandera stayed informed. Visits from his wife Yaroslava allowed him to communicate with OUN leaders still operating in the field. Some historians believe he helped coordinate their actions. Others argue he was simply a prisoner dreaming of control. Either way, his influence lingered like poison in the soil. Fall of the Third Reich and the return of the Cold War. By 1944, Germany was collapsing under the Soviet onslaught. Desperate, Nazi intelligence released Bandera from Sachsenhausen, hoping he would rally Ukrainian nationalists against the advancing Red Army. He promised to lead anti-communist operations, but it was too late. The front lines were crumbling. His army, the UPA, fought a losing battle in the forests, surrounded by enemies on every side. When Germany surrendered in 1945, Europe lay in ruins, millions dead, borders redrawn. And Bandera, still committed to a dream soaked in blood, went underground. He moved through the American-occupied zone of Germany, evading capture, while the Soviets demanded extradition. To Moscow, he was a murderer, a terrorist, and a traitor. To some Ukrainians in exile, he was a martyr who had defied both Hitler and Stalin. When Soviet and Polish officials sought to arrest him, Western intelligence saw him differently, as an anti-communist weapon in the new ideological battle of the Cold War. The CIA and West German intelligence did not officially employ him, but under secret programs such as Operation Anyface, the US and its allies blocked Soviet attempts to retrieve Bandera. They saw him as too dangerous to silence, but too useful to hand over. Life in exile and the assassin's approach by the 1950s, Bandera had settled in Munich, a post-war refuge for exiled Eastern Europeans. From there, he directed nationalist networks and underground propaganda aimed at destabilizing Soviet Ukraine. He lived quietly in an apartment building with his wife Yaroslava and their 3 children. But the Kremlin had not forgotten. The Soviet KGB tracked every step. Years of failed plots and missed opportunities led them to one final solution: execution. The chosen assassin was Bohdan Stashinsky, a young Ukrainian recruited and trained by the KGB. He was taught to use a secret weapon, an aerosol gun that sprayed deadly cyanide gas in an instant. The poison was designed to mimic a heart attack, leaving no clear trace of murder. In 1957, Stashinsky used the weapon to kill another target, Lev Rebet, a Ukrainian nationalist living in Munich. The operation was a success. 2 years later, the KGB ordered him to eliminate Bandera himself. On October 15, 1959, Stashinsky stalked Bandera outside his apartment. As the older man unlocked the door, the assassin fired the gas. Bandera collapsed within seconds, dying where he stood. Official reports listed a heart attack. The truth didn't surface until years later, when Stashinsky defected to West Germany and confessed legacy of a killer and a martyr today. Stepan Bandera's name ignites fierce controversy. In Western Ukraine, some hail him as a hero, a man who fought for independence against two totalitarian empires. Streets bear his name, statues stand in his honor, and his birthday is marked with torchlight marches. But across Poland, Russia, and Israel, he is remembered very differently, as a Nazi collaborator and orchestrator of ethnic cleansing, whose movement unleashed unimaginable suffering on innocent civilians. To them, Bandera's dream of freedom was built upon mass graves and betrayal. The truth, as often in history, is not clean. Bandera was a man of conviction, but conviction can blind. His actions, and those of his followers, intertwined Ukraine's independence struggle with one of the darkest ideologies of the 20th century. His cause may have been national liberation, but the price was the blood of thousands, the reckoning and the call to reflection. Why does this story still matter? Because it reveals how easily the line between liberator and villain can disappear. Bandera's story forces us to question how far nationalism can go before it devours the humanity it claims to defend. History is not always written in black and white. It's written in ashes, and the truth often burns both ways. As we remember the horror of the Eastern Front and the millions lost between empires, we also remember the moral duty to face history's shadows with open eyes. What happens when the pursuit of freedom turns into the justification for genocide? When loyalty to one's nation eclipses loyalty to humanity? Bandera's life is both a cautionary tale and a warning for the ages. Patriotism without conscience becomes tyranny in disguise. Call to action. If you believe history must be told unfiltered, not censored, not rewritten, then share this story. Hit that like button, subscribe to History of Army, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next deep dive into the darker corners of warfare and politics. Tell your friends that history isn't just dates and battles, it's choices, consequences, and the haunting echo of human ambition. Because to understand the world today, we must never forget the monsters and martyrs who shaped it.